Welcome back to Track Talk. We'll be doing another commentated game of 1817. We're going to jump into the game starting at the first stock round as we've done in the past. This may be the last game of 1817 we do for a while. It's just hard to find games that meet my kind of arbitrary criteria for the channel. We may have to give this particular title some time for more games to be played before we dive back into it. I think that probably the next title we do on the channel will be either 1841 or 1862, but it may be a couple of weeks and I may do some 1830 or 1846, one of the lighter titles in the meantime, just to build up a bigger stock of videos. So with all that said, let's jump right into the stock round. Crackpot's going to lead us off and he has priority. He has the train station, one of the more high utility privates in my opinion. His bidding value is the lowest in the game, and he has not the most cash. So he has left the private auction in a little bit of a weak position in terms of taking advantage of that seed money. He will have a lot of flexibility because of the cash, not necessarily going to be forced to take as many loans as other players. So he could look to start in cities or token locations where he can run multiple trains, knowing that he won't have to take loans to afford them. General Confusion will be going next. He has a bunch of mail and a major coal, so pretty flexible start. The mail companies don't really dictate where you start, I wouldn't say. He has very little cash, second least in the game, and he has the second most value. So he was able to take advantage of the seed money, but he's going to be a little bit more dependent on loans in the early game. And it's a little bit hard to predict where he'll be starting just because he has a bunch of mail contracts. Wally Burner, going third in priority, has the least cash, the most bid power. That tends to go hand in hand, but it's not always the case. He has a ton of privates, as you would expect for someone who has very little cash. And he has Ohio Bridge, Mountain Engineers, and Union Bridge. So he may be starting in the West, either Cincinnati, potentially Charleston. Although, yeah, no, that would be fine actually. So we've seen some players in other commentations or commentary start in Cincinnati and then run down to Louisville and use all their bridge companies. If he's able to get Charleston, I'm sure he'd be happy to take advantage of that. And then finally, Rumbleman, he has minor coal in Pittsburgh. He has a bunch of cash, which is very nice, I think, for Pittsburgh. You can buy a bunch of two trains and not have to cripple the company with loans in order to do it. The only red flag for him is that he doesn't have $330. So he's not going to be able to start three companies at 110. But again, if you have all this cash, you don't necessarily care that much about it because you're not going to be taking max loans potentially. It is a little bit annoying for him that he's going so late in priority, probably. He would like to have a better chance at starting the bid on Baltimore. That may be gone by the time he gets there. Charleston, same thing. He is not by any means locked out of those starts. He just would have to overbid another player if he wants them. And of course, they have very nice synergy with Pittsburgh, which he'll probably be running. Anyway, we'll jump into things. Crackpot's leading us off, and he is starting in New York, and he takes South New York. So we've talked about this many times on the stream, but South New York, a little bit dependent on Philadelphia and Baltimore. So bidding it first and bidding it low, which he has, is a little bit risky. We'll see if anybody wants to contest him for this. If I'm playing against him, I probably let him have it and then try and get Baltimore, Philadelphia, maybe even both at a higher par. General Confusion passing, Wally passing, and Rumbleman passing. So he ends up with the ANS uncontested in New York South. General Confusion will be up, and he's starting the ME in Scranton. Scranton's an interesting choice, not generally speaking a high priority token location. And we'll see if anybody wants to fight him for that. I don't imagine they do. He starts it for 110 as well. Interesting. So after I say it's not a high value location, Wally Burner is actually going to overbid him for that. I think that's a mistake. This is the player we identified as having a bunch of bridge companies and coal. Really not a lot of synergy with Scranton, but he will be taking it. He now has the option of starting another company, and let's see. He's going to pass. Okay, so some interesting play from Wally Burner already. Don't want to draw too many conclusions early, but I am concerned by what I'm seeing. Rumbleman, he is starting the J, and he takes it on Pittsburgh. So a Pittsburgh player will be getting Pittsburgh, it looks like, unless someone overbids him. But generally speaking, I think players are happy to have the Pittsburgh private go with the corresponding token. It just makes the map better for potentially everyone. Crackpot is passing, and Roman gets it for 110. We are back to Crackpot. He has $320 of value, and could see him start potentially 3 more companies as a result. He is starting the GT and takes Baltimore. So he has kind of lucked out, I would say, in terms of Baltimore being available. Nice synergy with New York South, and both of them are parred at 110, so should have no trouble cooperating with one another. In theory, Philadelphia could get in there and lay some tragic track, but that made it end up backfiring on the Philadelphia player more than it hurts Crackpot. General confusion. He lost out on his company to Wally Burner last time. We'll see what he wants to par this time. He's passing. 2 players are passing. Okay, so not really sure what's going on here. Tokens are super important in this game, and you're able to just reserve them without any connectivity when you par companies. So passing these important token spots early in the game is very dangerous. It really sets you up for failure. Rumbleman, he is bidding on the GT. Oh, sorry, I think I misinterpreted that. They were passing on the Baltimore, so they weren't parring new companies. He goes up to 200 for the GT. J is the Pittsburgh company, so he wants the Baltimore synergy. I think it's reasonable to bid on that. I don't know. I would have jumped up to 200 immediately. So it doesn't even eliminate Crackpot from counterbidding him. So he probably didn't have to be this aggressive. He could have tried to par this a little bit less. We'll see if Crackpot wants to contest it. He does not. So Rumbleman ends up with Pittsburgh and Baltimore, a nice synergy there. And I believe he had a bunch of cash. So both of these companies should have pretty healthy treasuries at the start of the game. Baltimore buys in Pittsburgh steel meal. So he could potentially have the GT operate before the Pittsburgh company, lay track on Pittsburgh, and then use both of the J company's track points to build very efficiently this way. Nice setup for him, but again, going up all the way to 200 at the start is a little bit risky. So back to general confusion. He is bidding on the best and puts it in Albany. Okay. Another starting location, which is maybe not always the most competitive. I'm surprised that we're seeing Charleston in particular still in the market. Charleston and Cleveland are usually very popular. But regardless, we'll be going on Albany. And I don't know that very many of these players have the ability to contest this. Wally is passing, and Crackpot passes as well. Happy to give it away. So the best is now in Albany. Wally's up, and he has a ton of value still with all of his privates. So any companies he float now, you expect them to be taking quite a few loans in order to buy their trains, which it's not the end of the world, but need to be cognizant of the decision making in the auction and how that affects your ability to float later. He's starting the A&A for 100, under that 110 mark, and we just commented how he's going to need to take a bunch of loans, so a little bit surprised to see him doing this. And he will take the first Cleveland city so far. Is anybody going to bid over him? Crackpot does. That may be a blessing in disguise for Wally. He may want to let this go. We'll see. Wally's overbidding him and ends up at for 115. So at least he will be able to take 2 loans still, which I assume he will need. Rumbleman, he still has, actually he has very little bid power, so should be passing probably. He's taking a loan to change operating order, and that was in the J. So he wants Which company is the J? He wants Pittsburgh to operate later in priority. I suppose that allows him to see how other players lay track towards Pittsburgh and he can orient the tile a little bit differently potentially. But the Pittsburgh tile is going to be laid by the GT, so he actually won't be able to see that. Yeah, I'm not sure what the purpose of that is. We'll have to see what he ends up doing with that. Rubbleman finishing, Crackpot. He is bidding on the belt. Does he put this in Cleveland? He does. His other company is the A&S, which is New York South. And I thought that he had ended up with the Baltimore tile, but I think that he got overbid. So Rumbleman, yes, we commented on that already. So A&S is still potentially vulnerable. He is bidding on Cleveland for now. Anybody going to contest this? Doesn't look like it. All right, so New York South and Cleveland. Cleveland now filled with tokens. General confusion, floating the UR. And he's doing New York. That must be the northern tile. Does that synergize with Bess at all? Yes. So he has New York North and Albany. And the other two players are passing, except because they have no bid power. Wally actually does have bid power. So he's just passing. I think he's done this once before. A little bit concerning. And we'll see if Crackpot wants to start a third company. He can only do it for 100. Looks like he will. B&A, does he take Charleston? Philadelphia. So he does secure himself a friend for the A&S, which is probably enough because I have to assume that the Baltimore company, the GT, is going to be laying towards Pittsburgh. So with Philadelphia and New York South, he should be able to get some friendly track. General confusion, I think he's floating his last company now. He has 105 bid power, so probably going to be the last company for him, unless it's stolen by Wally. He places a token on Rochester. Wow. So a lot of unusual starting cities. Very strange to me that Charleston hasn't been selected by anybody. You have to imagine that the player with the Union Bridge and mountain busting and all this coal would be heavily incentivized to put a city on Charleston. Wally does have bidding power left and the bridge company, so he may be doing that as his last action. We'll see. And Wally, he's starting the NYSW, does it on Indianapolis. Okay. Yeah. I think Charleston is probably objectively better. His other company is the A&A. It is in Cleveland. Could potentially build some synergistic track between those two companies, but I don't know. That seems not good. All right, so I think we've seen all of our companies start, and that will leave Rumbleman with priority. The first company to operate is in Baltimore, and I imagine we'll be seeing him starting to head over towards Pittsburgh here. He probably lays the Pittsburgh tile, at least. He does. And lays a second tile over to it. So we'll have a run into Pittsburgh in the next operating round. Takes a loan and buys two trains. Takes a second loan. Didn't really need to do that just yet. Not sure why he's doing that. Is he worried about paying the terrain cost towards Pittsburgh? But the J might be paying some of that terrain cost for him. Yeah, we'll have to see what he ends up doing with this track. UR operating out of New York, presumably heading up to Albany with his other company. And does. He already has a loan. Did he take that in the stock round maybe? No, he just took that before he laid the track. So he can afford a train, but we'll have to take a second loan for the interest. NYSW in Indianapolis. Very curious what this player is going to end up doing here. I don't remember who ends up winning this game. I try not to look in advance, but I'll be very surprised if it ends up being Wally with this start. Laying into the gray pre-printed track, so potentially has routes into Chicago and St. Louis from his company in the next operating round. He's going to buy just 1-2 train. Won't be able to afford a second one with the interest. A&S New York South is probably going to link up with the Philadelphia track. Could also head down into Baltimore. Wouldn't be the end of the world. But then where is Philadelphia going to head? So he is playing friendly with Philly for now and can afford 2 trains if he wants it, but only going to be able to run one of them. Could always buy the train out of the A&S into the Boston and Albany, run 2 trains with that company, which may be what he has to do. Buying just 1 train for now. Morristown is up. Scranton, of all places. Again, surprised to see these starts. Wally is running Scranton. Is he also the Rochester player? He's not. I don't know where he's going to hope to go there. Doesn't seem like he has really interesting routes with this start. He could buy a second train, but is going to pass for now, it looks like. Albany's up. Does he head up into Canada? He does. Probably wants 2 trains and can afford them, but just buys 1 for now. We'll see the first of the Cleveland operations, and this is Wally. So is he going to look to cooperate with the S, or is he going to head down to Pittsburgh? Looks like he's heading to Pittsburgh. Okay. I'm sure the J is happy to see this, Rumbleman. He has enough money for 2 trains. May want to pick up 2 here. Highly likely that he'll be running 2 trains in the next operating round. And he does. Belt, second Cleveland company, may not be eager to lay that $10 track for the Pittsburgh company. May want that to lay it itself. So instead could head over to Chicago or to Toledo. We'll see. Looks like he will. He's got a bunch of cash in this company and buys a train without having to take a loan. Could take a loan for a second one. Again, just like the A&A, highly likely they'll be running 2 trains. So he takes the loan and has 2 trains. Jay had his Pittsburgh tile laid for him, has coal. So does he head over to Baltimore now? He does. Yeah, I don't imagine you want to lay that track towards Cleveland for them, especially if they're going to be operating ahead of you. Pays the train cost for the second lay and has cash for 2 trains if he wants them. I think he does. He buys a train out of the GT. He buys 2 trains out of the GT, actually, and still has loan space for another if he wants. But I'm going to sit on just 2 trains. Does the GT still have a train? It does. So he bought 3 trains with the GT, and he may look to merge these 2 companies early. We'll see how the track develops. B&A, Philadelphia, probably laying towards New York South, and we'll get a link into Baltimore in the near future. Buys a train with no loans and is going to be content with that. Last company to operate is in Rochester, of all places, and he is setting up for runs into Canada. So again, what is Scranton getting out of this? He's going to be in a rough spot. Actually laying the second track, so we'll have a train cost to pay for, and he takes loans, which will actually put him into acquisition, it looks like. Yep. Buys 2 trains, though. So into the mergers and acquisition round, we will do our traditional, just look through the players' positions and see what they may be looking to do in this first merger round. Rumbleman, he's got Baltimore and Pittsburgh. He has 100% of these companies, so in terms of revenue, a little bit disincentivized to grow up, just because he's going to be getting all of it right now. And if he grows up, he will only be getting 40% of it. The other consideration in this early part of the merger and acquisition round is operating order. He's operating first with the GT, so he has a very, very good likelihood of ending up with a 2+ train. And he's operating late with the J, so he can potentially take advantage of green track laid for him in Pittsburgh and other revenue centers. So in terms of changing operating order, maybe not worthwhile to try and merge these companies or increase your stock value by doing that. However, if he grows up, he will have more loan space, could potentially snap up more of these 2+ trains than he otherwise could, which is potentially relevant for the GT. And then the kind of wild card here is this WT. So the WT is in acquisition, and currently Rumbleman doesn't have enough loans to actually take over the WT. The only player that does is the B&A. So if anybody's interested in this Rochester token, which again, not super valuable, um, they would potentially have to grow up other than Crackpot. Crackpot, speaking of, he has the New York South and Philadelphia and Cleveland, I believe. He is operating fairly late in turn order, so he may want to merge one of these companies just to try and shoot up and get a better chance of getting a 2 plus train. He's going to struggle to afford a 3 train if he operates late, which is the current status. The ANS has the extra token, so he's probably not going to be able to take advantage of that. He's operating late, but he would potentially be stuck with a token in Philadelphia, which is not that high yield. He's not going to be able to get the token in Pittsburgh, for instance. General confusion, he has very little loan space. He has this company in acquisitions. One thing I'll point out is even though this token is not very useful, it does have two trains. So, if you're able to snag the WT on the cheap, you potentially are just stealing 2 trains for, very little money. You will have to pay off the loans that this company has, so I guess you're not really getting them as cheap as it might seem, but you're denying them to general confusion, which would be pretty good. Wally Burner, he has companies all over the place. Cleveland, and then Indianapolis and Scranton, I want to say. Yes. So, not very good synergy for his companies. He is also operating fairly late in priority in terms of the A&A and the Morristown. So again, another player that may be incentivized to merge a company, try and leapfrog other players in operating order, open up some more room for loans, and then be able to snag a 2 plus that he otherwise wouldn't have available. I haven't seen a company in acquisition this early in a while. I don't think we've seen it on the stream, so I'll be curious to see how these players deal with this. Rumbleman, he is converting, so he now has loan space for that acquisition, and he also has plenty of room for a 2 plus trains. It does hurt his revenue, but I guess with only 1 train, his revenue wasn't going to be amazing, so probably worth the risk. Does anybody have cash to help him capitalize this company? No. Anybody else going to be doing anything in this operating round? If nobody else grows up or converts, there's not going to be a whole lot of competition for that acquisition potentially. Could see that going for very cheap. The Boston and Albany is the only other player that I think could compete for that. But so far, no one's doing a whole lot. Everyone's just passing. And we are into the acquisitions. 2 of the players are immediately eliminated. Crackpot and Rumble are the 2 players that have loan space for this company. And we'll see if there's any competition for it. Instead, Rumble wins it for just $10. So he gets 2 trains for $10, not including the loans that he had to account for as well. And in terms of token, it's not a great location, but at least it allows him to run the trains. Before, he only had to run into Pittsburgh. He would have to lay terrain for a second run. Now he can run 3 trains, no problems, with these 2 tokens. So it's pretty strong for him. I think it's a bad move to put that company in acquisition like that. Any other friendly sales going to be occurring? I don't imagine so. Should be able to move pretty quickly through it. So Rumbleman first operate with that GT, just acquired the Rochester token. And he's heading to Toronto just so he has 3 runs. Didn't want to pay the train into Philadelphia, it looks like. Runs for 150. He half pays that, and he has the cash for his interest and a 2 plus train. So very strong. Imagine he'll be shuffling some of these trains out of the GT and moving them into the J for their next operation and just run a ton of trains out of Pittsburgh. If he can snag Charleston, I think this game is over. He's got such a good start now. You are running out of New York North. No track for him, just running his 2 train. Does have loans to pay and can also pick up a 2 plus if he wants. He instead just going to pay off a loan. NYSW, he's not going to be able to pick up a 2 plus unless he partially withholds at least. I'll be very curious to see where he lays track here. He set himself up for 2 runs into Chicago and St. Louis, but he only has 1 train. So running to Chicago, a few extra bucks there. He full withholds and is going to pay his interest and pick up a 2 plus, I assume. He does. A&S operating out of New York South, still no access to green track, and running for 60, does have some interest to cover. Half pays and takes a loan, so it's going to be paying his interest and buying a 2 plus, it looks like. Scranton doesn't have a run, will not have a run until green. Heading towards New York, but he may end up paying the upgrade cost here. I don't imagine that New York South is going to be eager to link him in and pay to do it. So he has barely enough money for interest and is not going to be able to afford a 2 plus train. This Scranton start really has not paid off for him. Bess, no track for him, running a single train. A little bit surprised he didn't pick up a second 2 train early on. I guess he wouldn't have had the cash for it unless he half paid, but he half pays anyways. Belt, 2 trains, potentially only 1 run for it though. In fact, maybe not even that. He's going to have to take a loan to lay track, which he does. Links up with Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh is still yellow, so not the most exciting run. And he also lays the Toledo track. Very expensive track lays for him to get these runs. That's good news for the A&A, who's going to be able to piggyback off all that track. Does the A&A have 2 trains? It does. Okay. Jay, probably upset that Green hasn't broken. Operating as late as he is in operating order was probably expecting that, but players have not been, pushing trains very aggressively. And I guess even though Green doesn't break this operating round, doesn't mean that he still has the opportunity next operating round to operate late and take advantage of it. So not the end of the world. He's going to pass any track, just run his 2 trains, and he full pays that. He's able to double jump and still covers his interest. B&A in Philadelphia has no loans actually, so could take a loan and start picking up some of these 2 plus trains. Is there just 1 left? There is. May want to lay the train cost into Baltimore and then pick up a 2 plus as well. Just going to be sitting on things so as they are, and half pays. Now he's taking loans and has 2 trains as a result. Last company to operate, A&A. This is the company that is reaping the rewards of the Belt Company's track lays. He's heading up towards Toronto and running for 110. Does have some interest. He's going to have to at least half pay and can't quite afford a train. 3 train exports, and now we're into green. Good news for Rumbleman in Pittsburgh and basically all the players. GT has 4 trains in it. A little bit surprised he didn't redistribute these trains in terms of buying some over into the J. I think the J could expect probably some more track being laid for it. I don't imagine we're going to see Charleston sitting again. Probably someone will be starting that in the next stock round. Does anybody have a lot of cash to do that? Not necessarily. So maybe we'll just see a little bit of a stall here. And looking at the players' positions once more. Rumbleman has 1 5-share company already, so no merge for him. Don't think he really wants to grow up the J just yet. Crackpot, he has very little loan space, so he may want to merge 2 of these companies, get a single extra loan that way, and also increase his share value. Could also just grow one of these companies up. If he were to do that, get an extra token, Although he already has a token in the ANS. That is the New York South Company, so maybe not the most important one. Does he have a Cleveland? I think he does, right? Yes. So may want to grow up belt and try and snag a token in Pittsburgh. Um, we'll see if he does that. UR and Bess operating out of New York North and Albany, or sorry, yeah, Albany. Um, he has some loan space already, but running just two trains, he's going to start falling behind if he doesn't start using some of these financial mechanisms to leverage his capital a little bit better. And then Wally, kind of the agent of chaos in this game. He does have two trains operating out of Indianapolis now, two trains operating out of Cleveland, and then one train which is doing nothing for him in Scranton. Will have green track available to him, but no guarantee that he has the money to lay the track. He would have to take a loan currently. So um, he may want to merge a company here to get himself out of this Scranton situation and just start running trains with other companies. We'll see what he decides. GT passing UR. Again, this player is only running two trains, doesn't have very amazing track. He may need to start thinking about growing up companies just for more capital. He merges, gets a little extra loan space, one extra loan, and can buy a share here just to invest his cash prior to the um, stock round if he wants. Rumble Man, he can also do that. Going to pass for now. So it doesn't look like anybody's interested in capitalizing that company. NYSW, passing, the belt. Looks like pretty much everybody's passing now. What is going to happen with this Scranton company? Is he just going to let the status quo? Looks like it. And then Boston and Albany, passing. Don't imagine we'll be seeing friendly sales. Probably can move through this quickly. And correct. We're into the next stock round. So Rumbleman and Crackpot kind of leaders in the clubhouse in terms of cash right now. Wally Burner falling behind, and then General Confusion also falling behind. He did merge his two companies, but he has very limited opportunities to use his cash other than buying paying shares here. A lot of two-share companies, so just really not enough shares available. And the UR in particular is quite expensive. So I don't know that a lot of players are going to be racing towards that. Its run is going to be a little bit anemic. May just see these GT shares fly off the shelves. Bad news for Wally is he's not going to get one. Rumbleman, he buys the GT, 60% of his own company now. Crackpot, he's doing the same thing. And General buying the GT. So Wally out of luck, and we'll just be passing. At least gets, actually, it may not even end up with priority depending on what Rumbleman does here. And Rumbleman, he is parring a company. Did he have 110? It looks like it. Nice. So he is parring the Bass, and he puts that in Detroit. Interesting. Why is everybody so afraid of Charleston? I guess it's a little bit more of an expensive start if you don't have the privates to synergize with it. Does his J company have any of these privates? No. So maybe that's why he in particular is not doing that. It is unusual though. Starts with 110, and everybody will be passing. Emmy is taking a loan, so he is going to be operating a little bit less in the next stock round. He also puts himself in acquisition. I think he lost his other company doing the same thing. We'll see how this plays out. UR does have access to green tokens or green tiles. Probably needs to upgrade to Albany. Don't think he wants to pay for the New York train cost. Would really be doing Scranton a favor if he did that, and is able to double tap Albany. So he upgrades there. Runs both of his trains. Does have a little bit of interest he needs to take care of, but with this treasury, probably just full pay and then look at paying off loans in the next operating round. He takes another loan. We'll be picking up a 3, it looks like. Not going to have track for it as things stand yet. Could look to linking up with Scranton and then getting 2 runs into New York in the future, but it's going to be a little bit expensive for him to do that. GT, 4 trains. Currently has runs for 3 of them, but has a bunch of cash as a result of people buying his shares, so really not hard for him to link up with Philadelphia to get a fourth run. Also has the token and access to Pittsburgh. I imagine he snags that actually. We'll see if he upgrades Pittsburgh. He does. Now, 2 tokens on Pittsburgh for this player. He's in a very strong position, can run all 4 of his trains, and is potentially telegraphing a lead into Charleston. I was surprised that that didn't happen last stock round. I think people were just a little tight on cash. Rumbleman has somehow ended up with priority again. That loan from Wally on the Morristown is putting Rumbleman in the position to snag this Charleston start. Yeah, if this continues, we may just want to call this commentary. Rumbleman is in a very powerful position. Majority owner of this massive payout does have some interest he needs to worry about, but has a pretty healthy treasury already, so can probably just full pay and then start paying off loans. He actually full withholds, okay, so maybe not wanting his stock value to leap up there with all these 2 trains. But he's going to be full paying at least one of these operating rounds. So pays off all his loans, and stock value jumps up there despite not paying with all those payments. Jay, operating 2 trains out of Pittsburgh, may want to buy trains across here. With all the loan space in the GT now, he could take loans and buy better trains into the GT in the next operating round. Upgrades Baltimore. He doesn't have the room for that token. A&S does have a token. Boston and Albany does not, and A&S operates before Boston and Albany, so going to be hard for him to get down here to token in Baltimore. Maybe I'll grow up this J and snag the Baltimore token in the next operating round. A&S is at max loans and only has $25 in his treasury, so not going to be able to lay the track into Baltimore to snag that token spot. Am I right in saying AS has a token? Yes. It's the train company, I think. So he's safe and has a pretty nice run for himself. Running for 200, full paying, I assume. He's taken a loan. Did he not have money for his interest? He had exactly enough. So what's he doing with this extra $100? Oh, I see. So he needed the money to shuffle trains out of the GT. That's unfortunate because he didn't have even $1 over his interest. So he pays, and then we'll start buying trains out of the GT as expected. Looks like he just buys 1 for now. Bess, his next company, so Rumbleman has operated 3 companies in a row. And does he link up with Toronto just to help out the token in Rochester? Instead, bypassing Cleveland. I see. So I think that we will see actually Rumbleman not laying towards Charleston, and he's going to be looking to get the Bess into Pittsburgh as well. All right. And is the Bess going to take loans for a 3 train here, or is he going to buy trains out of the GT as well? He really kind of needs the 3 train to hit Pittsburgh, so he may just take loans. Secures himself a 3. NYSW does have 2 routes with this track lay and is running for 140. Has some interest he needs to cover, so we'll have to have pay. Belt, operating out of Cleveland, does have access to Pittsburgh. In theory, could lay 2 routes into Pittsburgh, but that would be pretty expensive, and he has interest to cover. So maybe he just wants to upgrade Toledo for his run. He does. And has money for interest, so is just going to pay the interest this time and maybe look to withhold and pay off loans next operating round. A&A out of Cleveland, same routes as the Belt, and already has 2 loans. He is looking to link up with Indianapolis potentially. Not really the most exciting track for him. It's nice to link your companies up, but really, I don't know, not the most useful. Withholds 160, probably paying off some loans here. A&S Does he upgrade Philadelphia? He instead upgrades New York. Um, so Wally Burner getting a gift here. And I'm a little bit surprised by that. He can run 2 trains now, but if he had upgraded Philadelphia and token there, yeah, he still wouldn't have 2 routes. So it makes sense he's doing it, but it is expensive. He runs for 160, half pays, and will cover his interest. Boston and Albany, he's upgrading Philadelphia, no token for him. He does have 2 trains. Links up with Baltimore for his second route, unable to secure the token. And Scranton, first run for him, could just upgrade his home. Instead, looking to head up into Montreal with a single train, not the most high priority goal. Runs for 80, probably wants to half pay here. Yes. And can pay off a loan. M&A round. So Rumbleman running companies out of Pittsburgh at this point. Don't think he wants to merge the J and the Bess. We'll be able to maintain 100% of the revenue and doesn't worry, probably not too worried about operating order in terms of jumping his stock price up there. Would have to be a little bit careful about opening himself up to shorts if he were to shoot up there in stock price. Crackpot, he actually is interested potentially in merging, and this would allow him to get down into Baltimore and drop a token there before the J operates if he were to merge his Philadelphia and New York companies and leapfrog him in operating order. The J, I should correct myself, doesn't have a token, so unless the J grows up, doesn't have to worry about that. And the J is going to be operating before either of these 2 companies in this merger and acquisition round, so he will have knowledge of whether or not he needs to worry about that or not. General confusion, only one company, really doesn't have too many options. Could grow up the UR, but I don't think he wants to or needs to. Wally Burner, hard for me to predict what this player does. ANA and NYSW are probably going to be cooperating in terms of track very soon, but doesn't mean that he needs to merge those companies. Has very limited loan space, so may look to grow up at least one of these companies to snag a 3 train. Operating with just these 2 trains is going to be a little bit risky for him. He will have track that I think will allow him to take advantage of a 3 train. For instance, in the S, running from St. Louis to Chicago, and then run a 2 train up into Toledo, for instance. So it may see him grow up a company. I don't know that he needs to merge. We'll see what happens. GT, he's passing. Curious to see what happens with the J here. Does he try and grow up for this token on Baltimore? Alternatively, he could merge and get a token that way. It would also shoot his stock price up and guarantee that he's able to operate ahead of the New York company. But I think it's a little bit risky in terms of maintaining your share price at a reasonable level and preventing shorts. He converts, so we'll get the token. And we'll see if anybody wants to leapfrog him. Belt, passing, NYSW, converting. This will give him money for that 3 train we talked about. A&S. So this is going to be interesting. If he were to merge with the B and A, he would end up with stock price of what, 95, and the J is at 60. So he could snag that token if he wanted it. He's in a little bit of trouble if he doesn't, I think. Getting tokened out at Baltimore would be bad news. He's not going to be able to get into Pittsburgh from the east, and not going to be running through New York until Brown. Although this Scranton track has kind of opened up pathways to the north. So yeah, we'll see how much he values this. He does merge, and I think we're probably seeing this because he wants to operate ahead of the J. So new stock price of 90, which is still, I believe, enough. Yes, more than enough. He is capitalizing his company, ANS and ME. or A&A and ME, converting. And we're into the acquisition round. I usually assume players are not doing anything in this round, but I'm not going to try and predict it. Into the next operating round, GT could be laying up to Detroit. Doesn't really have any upgrades that are worth speaking about so far. Getting 2 runs out of Baltimore, and will leave the best to fend for itself in terms of linking up with Detroit or Pittsburgh. So very nice runs for him. And taking loans, he paid off all of his loans with a withhold last time. Now he's taking the loans and I guess buying a 3. So unfortunately not able to full pay either time with the GT. Loses a fair amount of revenue from that. UR 3 trains and track options a little bit limited. Only $28 of treasury. Does have loan space for 1 loan if he wants to use that to get a 3rd run. Upgrades into Scranton and now has 2 runs into New York. Very nice. Doesn't have a token to defend this, and the ANS now has options in terms of Baltimore versus a token in Scranton. That may not be a choice worth even considering. Probably just want Baltimore. UR does have good revenue, and he's the sole investor in the company. He half pays and will be able to pay off a loan. ANS 4 trains in this company, has routes for all of them, and courtesy of the GT track has 2 runs into Baltimore actually. So that'll be pretty lucrative. He grabs that token in Baltimore. Jay probably a little bit sad about that, but Rumbleman's been getting everything he could ask for so far in this game, so can't be too upset, I don't think, with how things are working out. Running for 370. Rumbleman is a investor in this company. And ANS full withholds. That's rough. So we'll be paying off his loans. At least Rumbleman will get the stock jump from that. And the ANS may be an attractive short target with a stock price of 120. Only a 5-share company. Crackpot hasn't managed to secure himself a single 3 train. So these 2+ trains, of course, with the soft rusts are a little bit better than the 2s, but Crackpot may be a short target here. And Rumbleman, sitting not on a whole lot of cash, may need to short to keep his train running. He's going to have more cash now, of course. Jay links up with Detroit and even upgrades there. May snag the token there instead of Baltimore, so not the end of the world for him since he already has a Baltimore token. Running his 3 trains and half paying. He's going to pay off some loans, it looks like. Actually, sorry, he buys a train. So we'll have 4 trains in the J. And is this pushing us towards the 4? 6 trains left. So we're going to need a float storm in this next stock round in order to punish Crackpot if Jay wants to do that. Belt. Running his 2 trains, not laying any track. And he's going to have to pay off some loans here. He succeeds. NYSW probably linking up with Toledo, but has lost out on that token in Detroit. Bad news for him. And instead heading to Cincinnati. He full withholds. We'll be able to pay off some loans, but actually he's buying a 3 as well. A&A. He now links up with Indianapolis. Does have a token. Does he leave a token on Indianapolis? I think that would be a mistake. Not a very valuable token location. He does. Doesn't need that token to run either. Can run into Pittsburgh twice, which is just as good as Chicago. So that's just a worst run, right? Chicago and Indianapolis versus Cleveland and Pittsburgh. It's $10 less. Okay. Running for 170. And he buys a 3 train. Scranton has 2 runs into New York, amazingly, but can't take advantage of it. Only has 1 train. And runs for 90. He's going to have to withhold for interest here. and he buys a train out of the NYSW. So we'll be running 2 trains next round, but needed a 3 to hit New York twice and didn't buy that one. He's operating late in priority. Both these 2 trains may rust before they run. Bass with a 3 train can hit Pittsburgh, and not sure where he's heading with that track. He half pays, will be able to cover his interest. He buys a train out of the J. Again, these 2 trains are probably not long for the world. And Crackpot in particular is sitting on a ton of cash. Rumbleman has been playing this kind of conservatively in terms of half paying and full withholding to pay off loans. Has managed to secure himself 3 trains, which Crackpot has no 3 trains. So just 2 different styles of play. Very risky from Crackpot here. I wonder if we're going to be seeing a lot of shorting of his ANS. Could defend that. He has the loan space. And Rumbleman or these other players may look to doing that to raise capital to float companies and rest these trains. In terms of the mergers and acquisition, maybe a kind of boring round. Could see our first 10 share companies with a merge of the J and the GT, but that would be putting a target on Rumbleman's back that he probably doesn't want. And he's already a majority investor in these 2 companies, so maybe happy to sit on these 3 trains for now, let other players do stuff in this merger and acquisition round to shake up the status quo. Crackpot, he has no opportunity to merge, could grow up the belt, and may need to. He's kind of running out of loan space. He's a short target in the ANS, so may need loans to survive. General confusion, not a whole lot of options in the merger and acquisition. And then Wally Burner has 2 5-share companies, but again, growing these up, maybe not merging them, maybe not the best option. Would have to discard a train, for instance. His share value is so low, I don't think it makes him a short target necessarily. And he has 2 3 trains, so probably safe, maybe just happy to sit on the status quo. ANS, passing, UR, passing, a bunch of players just passing here. And the M&E converts. This gives him loan space. It also gives him that token that he probably wants in order to improve his runs. With just 2 2 trains, he can't hit New York twice, so maybe looking at the token in Albany, and that's why he's growing up. Also could be looking towards the north in Rochester. We'll have to wait and see. Crackpot may want to invest some money here so he's not stuck in the stock round going last, but he has so much cash. I mean, he could float a bunch of companies. Maybe he doesn't want the little old Morristown company. General confusion, he is buying into the Morristown, and we will see the remainder of this acquisition round. Looks like everyone's passing, and I don't think we'll be seeing any friendly acquisitions. Into the stock round, Rumbleman with priority, but not as much cash as Crackpot. He has a massive share lead, though. And we'll see. I mean, is he going to start shorting the ANS? He buys a UR. UR does have nice revenue. But I don't know that these 2 trains are going to run. Crackpot should be floating a couple companies here. Needs to be careful he doesn't rust his own 2 trains, I suppose. He's floating the NYOW, can snag some tokens. Does he look at Albany? Philadelphia, okay. So he now has both Philadelphia tokens. This is going to be bypassed most likely with an upgrade on F21. And Philadelphia is kind of dead in terms of getting into Pittsburgh. We'll need to upgrade around Baltimore. He starts this as a 2-share company, max par. And General Confusion is buying the NYSW, not the most exciting company, but cheap. Wally Burner buying the ANS, that company is sold out. Rumbleman buying the ANA, so nobody's shorting here. And Rumbleman is buying the M&E. Crackpot has 150 bucks, but he's been passing, not eager to buy shares. I guess limited shares available. And we'll pass right into the next operating round. So Crackpot given priority. operating his new company. He links up with New York and taking loans here. Is he going to just push trains? So buys 2 3s, one of those left, and we will be seeing that 4 train coming out soon. Lucky for him, A&S is operating early enough, nobody shorted it, that he's going to be able to run all of his trains one more time. Worked out really nicely for him. I think this is a gift from the other players. I don't think he should have been allowed to get away with this. A&S running his 4 trains, 370, no loans, so we're going to be full paying here. Actually half pays, and I guess just setting himself up for when these 2 trains rust. Could have full paid though. I might have been tempted to full pay. UR heading up towards maritime provinces, laying some coal, running for 280, and has a pretty healthy treasury, so not overly worried about the interest payments. Paying off his loans. GT, 4 trains for him. Does have good routes, but again, all these 2 trains are going to be going away, and they're not even plus trains, so this is the end of the line for the GT until he gets some better trains. Gets a run into New York now, able to bypass Philly. Running for 440, and he's been playing it very conservatively, but he's fallen a little bit behind Crackbot, I feel like, if he isn't able to full pay. So half paying, going to pay off some loans probably. Shooting up there in stock value. Needs to be very careful that he doesn't get a monstrous stock value and not have the trains to back that up. Looking to bypass Pittsburgh, it looks like. And it's interesting that he's doing that as he has both tokens in Pittsburgh. So why would you devalue your own tokens? Not sure where that's headed. Running 3 trains, 330. Has some loans here, so based on how he's been playing, he may half pay for the loans. He's going to have to, just because of the interest, actually. And he'll be able to pay off a loan. Belt out of Cleveland. Heading into Chicago, now that's been tokened out of Indianapolis. Running for 160, also is going to have to half pay. He full withholds, will pay off a loan. Actually shuffling some trains out of the newly floated company as well. Able to secure himself a 3 train. M&E getting a second run into New York. Does have that token. Is he just going to sit on it for now? He tokens Albany, so that's interesting. Why lay that track? Only 2 trains, and you get the token in Albany. He's not able to take advantage of the coal. Runs for 180 withholds. Going to be paying off loans. Actually buys the 3, so we will be seeing the 4 export guaranteed. Okay. Wally running 3 trains. Laying the bridge on Cincinnati. And running mostly out of Cleveland. I guess he's unable to double tap Chicago as a result of laying the Cincinnati token. That may be short-sighted. Maybe that would have been a better move than heading up to Detroit. Same money, I guess, so equivocal. He full withholds and paying off his loans. Bess, he has linked up to Toronto. The GT now has access into Detroit from 2 directions. And this may be a setup for merging these companies and just getting a run all the way around the map with the GT, since he has access to New York from the south and will soon have it from the north once he links up here. Not going to have the long enough trains to take advantage of that, but it will be a nice late game run for him. He's withholding and going to pay off a loan, it looks like. NYSW heading down into Louisville through Cincinnati. Kind of random track out here. Wally is building himself an empire that leads to nowhere, it looks like. Running 2 trains, and he full withholds. Paying off some loans. All right, so the two trains have rusted, and that should really shake up the game state. There was a lot of withholding, a lot of loan repayments in that last operating round. People are playing this very conservatively. Looking at the status at the start of the merger and acquisition, Crackpot has some impending train liability with these 2+ trains that'll be rusting, but fortunately for him, he doesn't have to fall back. No way to merge this company with 5 shares, as his other two companies are 2-share companies. May look to get rid of this NYOW and just put it in with the belt. Unfortunately for him, I don't think these two companies have very good synergy in terms of track. The belt is operating out of Cleveland, and the NYOW is in Philly. Um, that said, if they link up through this train north of Pittsburgh, which I think was made possible by the J of all people, he would have some nice runs from Chicago into New York. Going to need longer trains to do it, but maybe we'll see that. General Confusion, nothing for him to do really. Could grow up, but really is going to be a short target in that case. Wally Burner, he's got all 5-share companies. Could combine those, but why? I don't know that he needs to. May want to just sit on the 20% shares as opposed to the 10% shares for revenue purposes. And then Rumbleman, I had really liked his position earlier on. He is leading in value. I just think that he let Crackpot kind of get away with more than he should have in the last stock round. Still in a strong position, and in terms of merging, he's got such good tokens. I don't think he wants to lose sole control of Pittsburgh by merging those companies. Um, could grow up the best just for some more loans. We'll need to afford more expensive trains in the near future. So maybe that's the extent of what he would do in this round. UR, very high share price. Definitely going to be a short target if he were to grow up here. And passes, NYOW, passing. Looks like so far everybody's content. And the M&E is the only player to do anything so far. He is converting to a 10-share company. Going to have kind of lackluster runs, single 3-train, and he's just diluted his investment in the company. Seems like a mistake. We'll have plenty of loans to push trains, but his other companies don't really have good trains. So if you push trains, you're just going to be rusting your own trains. Yeah, seems not good. He is getting some capital into this company, but it's only $50 a share, so just depleting his treasury. Rumbleman selling out, sees that this is a massive liability at this point, doesn't want anything to do with it. Crackpot is passing, and General Confusion is continuing to invest. So I think we're starting to see some dichotomy in the players here. Rumbleman and Crackpot in at least decent positions, starting to run away with this, and Wally and General Confusion just continuing to fall further and further behind, which is interesting because those are the two players that have invested in this Morristown company. Probably some correlation there. M&E buying his tokens, A&A passing, NYSW also passing. So the one thing about growing up into a 10-share company is that you potentially open yourself up to friendly acquisitions. We'll see if, and by that I mean acquiring your own companies, of course. We'll see if he wants to try anything fancy with his new 10-share company. Doesn't look like it. And we'll just pass into the operating round. UR, now that the 2 trains have rusted, much lower revenue potential. It does have loan space for a 4 if he wants it. And running a 3-train for 130. He pays that out. And just going to be sitting on the 3-train. So falling further and further behind. It's, stressful taking loans and pulling the levers of 1817, but if the other players are doing it and able to leverage their cash and use the power of these loans and you just aren't, you're just going to fall behind. NYOW, 2 loans for him, so may see a half pay here. He is getting a second access into New York and running his 3-train for 140, full pays. ANS, last operation of these 2+ trains. Got a gift in being able to run them again. Running his trains, 220, pretty good. And we'll have to pick up a 4, but had exactly enough cash. And has full loan space too, so really could pick up another train if you wanted. GT, running just a single 3 train. He takes a loan. Is he going to be picking up a 4? Looks like it. Okay, so a little bit more aggressive play from Rubbleman. I like that. He's still withholding, though. He's doing a lot of withholding on his companies. It is keeping his share value a little bit more under control relative to the UR and the ANS, for instance. J, last run of this 2 plus train. And it seems like a lot of players are very eager to bypass Pittsburgh across the north corridor here. I'm a little bit surprised that Rubbleman has been an active participant in that. I would assume that he wants to block this development. Probably not going to be able to block it all game, but why aid it when you have both tokens? So he's continuing in this endeavor. How does this help him? I don't see it. Running for 240, only a single loan, really should be looking to full pay on some of his companies, I think. And he's going to be taking some more loans, buying a 4. So he had to full withhold again. That's rough. Belt running out of Cleveland, links up with Chicago, got a nice run. Actually, is unable to hit Chicago and Pittsburgh, unfortunately, at least for now, because of Toledo. Running for 120, single loan, probably will have pay to pay it off. Full pays, and is able to cover his interest. Bess, he is, I guess, looking to bypass Rochester, get easier access to New York. Running for 130, he half pays, covers his interest. ME with a 3 train, running into New York. Heading towards Boston. Lots of coal being laid up by Boston. Don't see that as often. That's a function of Charleston never starting in this game. Runs for 130 and pays it out. Taking a bunch of loans. We'll have a 4 train. A&A. Completing this road to nowhere. And runs for 120. Taking more loans, so the 4 trains are being all bought up here. Wally has a ton of loans now, though. And is he going to do it again with his 3rd company? Cincinnati upgraded. And withholding, looks like he will be buying another 4. Wow. So loan must have just shot up in that operating round in terms of the interest payments. Where's that market? Yeah. So 25, and it was only 10 before. Very cheap loans last operating round. Everybody has a bunch of 4 trains. Looking at the merger and acquisition. Crackpot, still running out of New York South and Cleveland. I keep forgetting where the NYOW is. It is in Philadelphia. Needs to find a way to defend this ANS. Has no permanent trains. We are starting to have more liquidity. May see a train rush that I was expecting in the last stock round. So it needs to be a little bit careful about this elevated stock value of the ANS. It does have a 4 train, which is going to be sticking around for a while, but his other 2 companies just have 3s, so he's going to have to be doing some withholding soon, I think. And if he were to merge, the NYOW at least would decrease that stock value a little bit, make him a little bit less of a precarious position. General confusion as usual, just a single company, not a whole lot of options. Wally Burner has a ton of 4 trains and a ton of loans. He has a 10 share company, but its value is only 40, so probably safe from being a short target there. And he actually already has a company in acquisition, so he is really running in the gutter here. 40 right above acquisition and 1 company already in acquisition. Really not able to take any advantage of stock appreciation. And despite having cheap shares, is not the share leader. So I don't like this. I think he's in a pretty precarious position. Um, and he has limited options as well with a 5 share company, a 10 share company, and a company acquisitions. Um, he needs to be careful that he doesn't lose another company. I think this is the player that lost that Rochester token to Rumbleman at the start of the game. This NYSW company is vulnerable. He has loan space available to protect it in the Morristown and Erie. Um, but the Morristown and Erie doesn't have a very large treasury um, compared to some of these other players either. Well, I guess it's about the same. So this may be an incentive for one of these other players to grow up to attack the NYSW or try and acquire that 4 train on the cheap. Um, Rumbleman actually has loan space in the GT already, so wouldn't necessarily have to grow up to do that. And so does the ANS. So we'll see. Wally Burner may be setting himself up for another acquisition. Um, the NYSW token, not the most exciting over in Indianapolis, but again, getting a 4 train may be worthwhile for that reason. That's what we saw with the Rochester token too. ANS passing, NYOW passing. So far, everybody's just passing, and we are into a conversion. A is converting. So he now has 2 companies that could potentially acquire his acquisition company. He is capitalizing this company. It's dangerous for him to be doing this. I mean, he's buying all of his shares and not putting very much company money in there. All right. I guess this gives him a healthier treasury to buy his acquisition company, though. Other players investing in the ANA, and we'll see what happens with the NYSW. Is anybody going to compete with the Wally Burner player for this? I think with this grow up at the ANA and buying all those shares, the ANA should be able to acquire this company. Train limit right now is 4 or 3, so he will have to discard a train. A little bit inefficient. Crackbot happy to bid 10. General Confusion staying in there as well. Wally Burner, so we may just see them inch up, but Crackbot is already passing. General Confusion going up to 60. Company's worth at least that much. I mean, definitely worth more than that. Um, Token is $50 in of itself, and it has a 4 train. This may force Wally to pay himself, so to speak, and lose a bunch of cash into the next stock round. General Confusion staying right up to him. Going pretty expensive now. And it ends up going for 190 to General Confusion. So Wally has lost his second company, but you know what? He got paid out, has a little bit more cash into the stock round as a result. So maybe he's okay with that. The UR acquired that company, and the UR really cannot really take advantage of this token, I don't think. Has been tokened out at Detroit, never had an opportunity in Cleveland, Pittsburgh, so the map is cut in half for the UR. Does have some better trains now. And did he have to discard a train? Doesn't look like it. Okay. So Wally is giving away a lot of companies this game. I think this one is a little bit less consequential than the first one, but kind of rough. I don't think we'll see any other friendly sales, and we're into stock round 4. Crackbot is second most cash, has priority. Rubbleman most cash, but last in priority, and is 2 shares behind Wally. Wally bought a bunch of shares in that merger and acquisition round, and I think Rumbleman sold out, so that's why that has changed. Rumbleman and Crackpot neck and neck. I think Rumbleman has been playing very safely and kind of slow playing this. I do like his position in this game better than Crackpot's, so we'll see if he's able to continue to eke out a win here. Crackpot, in terms of companies, has some train liability coming up, but probably still wants to use his cash to float another company here. We'll be curious to see if anybody starts shorting his company. The NYOW also has a high share price, but being a two-share company is safe. And the rest of these companies, probably not really short targets. Yeah, the UR with three trains, I think is secure. GT, good map position, loan space, probably not a short target either. So maybe only the A and S we will see some shorts on. Crackpot, he's floating the SR, puts it on Scranton, so people are loving the Scranton token. General Confusion buying the UR. This will have very nice revenue for at least the next operating round. Wally Burner buying the ME. This is the other Scranton company. Two trains, two runs into New York will be decent, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not a fan of the ME's position in this game. Rumbleman apparently disagrees with me. He's buying the ME. Crackbot, I guess they're just buying cheap shares. May see the A and A also sell. ME is going to be floating up. And Wally Burner turning around buying the last UR. We are seeing all these cheap shares go. And where's the A and A? Okay, so that is sold out as well. Wally Burner's passing, Rumbleman. He's now floating. And he takes Toledo. That's an interesting token choice. Okay. Does he have other tokens that he's looking to leave on Toledo? Not currently. So may need to grow up one of these companies or merge in order to get another token to complement that. Crackpot has capitalized his company and is now taking loans to have it operate after the B&A, I assume. Not entirely sure why he'd want that. The 5 trains are available. So probably want to pick those up. Rumbleman, he's buying a B&A, capitalizing this company. And he also takes a loan. Will be operating behind the SR. Both have $650. 5 trains are 600, so I guess they just wanted to have the cash to outright buy it. SR is continuing to take loans to operate later in order here. And B&A is following right behind. So both these players are jockeying for operating second. They may be fighting for access to brown tiles. That's what makes most sense to me. And suppose the Pittsburgh tile potentially becomes available. And the two companies that were floated are the SR and the B&A. SR is operating out of Scranton. Doesn't have Pittsburgh access just yet. Would have to lay this token or this track and then get into Pittsburgh. So maybe they're competing over that Pittsburgh token. Looks like they're going to continue. It'll be a race to the bottom, and Rumbleman, since he floated last, will be guaranteed to operate second if they both take max loans. So Rumbleman does secure operating second, and A&S is first operate in this operating round. Interestingly, we still have not seen any shorts in this game. I do think the A&S is a reasonable short target, so people are just playing it very, very conservatively. Upgrading down into Richmond potentially, running for 200, and he full pays. No loans, so no need to worry about withholding. NYOW, running a 3 train, not laying any track, and he has to half pay to cover his interest. SR, going to be buying a 5 train most likely. And is just shuffling trains out of the NYOW. Maybe doesn't want to open up brown just yet. B&A, not sure where he's headed. Maybe just looking to bypass Indianapolis, get some track into St. Louis down later in the game. Does he buy a 5? He does. And maybe losing out on a token on Pittsburgh as a result. However, he already has both Pittsburgh tokens. I don't know that he cares that much at this point. Starting to pay off loans. GT, upgrades New York, and is not going to be laying any tokens. Half pays and is paying off a loan. UR, access to brown tokens now, brown tiles now, has already had New York upgraded for him, and he's going to upgrade Pittsburgh, and of all companies to get it, it looks like the UR is going to snag a token in Pittsburgh. Didn't see that coming. Well, nice. General Confusion really needed some help in this game. He's, I think, in a rough spot. Running 3 trains out of Pittsburgh now with that new token, and he's able to half pay and start paying off his loans. I think Rumbleman is okay with this. I don't think he's worried about General Confusion as a competitor, and as long as Crackpot doesn't get, you know, a good token, he's probably happy. The J upgrades in Baltimore, doesn't have a token for it, and runs for 410. He has some loans, so I imagine he'll be at least half paying, and he will pay off a loan. Belt, single 3 train, very underwhelming, and upgrades Toledo, running for 150, and has to half pay for interest. Bess, also with a single 3 train, he's upgrading Detroit, opening up a token potentially, and runs for 160, half pays off a loan. M&E, everybody was eager to buy up these cheap companies. Let's see how their revenue pays out. He finally links up this northern bypass of Pittsburgh and secures a token in Baltimore. So the two players that have been trailing all game are able to secure some pretty important tokens here as a result of Crackpot and Rumbleman kind of fighting one another, I think. Running for 410, he full withholds and will be paying off a bunch of loans. So all those low value shares just got a lot more valuable. Good investment for everybody. A&A, similar situation, running 2 trains. Has a token available, could drop a token in New York, and does. So running 2 trains out of New York, hopefully. Looks like not yet. Withholds again, and will also be paying off loans. And 5 train converts or exports. We are into the merger and acquisition round. Let's just look at this game state for a second. Rumbleman is in the lead and has a little bit of loan space. Doesn't have a whole lot of loans that he needs to worry about. He has 1 permanent train. He's going to have to start merging companies here to reduce his train liability. Crackpot is his nearest competitor. Was shuffling trains in the last operating round, so is going to lose a run, and also doesn't have a permanent train just yet. And even by shuffling, was unfortunately not able to secure really any high value tokens. Has lost those out now. So definitely a weaker position. General Confusion, he has 3 trains, but none of them are permanent. He has limited loan space and has a very high stock price. So needs to be careful. He's barely ahead of Wally Burner, who has no permanent trains and a ton of loan space. So Wally probably won't be going bankrupt, but needs to somehow find a way to get some better trains for himself. Wally has really no options in this merger and acquisition round. Rumbleman does have options with multiple 5-share companies. Probably wants to merge some of these companies starting now, just so he doesn't have to worry about affording trains for them soon. And then Crackpot may also want to merge companies, especially since he has one that's going to be falling back. We'll see. A&A, 5-share company, passing. UR, 5-share company, passing. NYOW, the train that's company that's trainless, is not going to be converting just yet, but could later, obviously. Rumbleman, is he going to be eliminating any of his train liability? He does. It's kind of as predicted. He merges the B&A with the GT. B&A is operating out of Toledo. And the GT is the company with all these great tokens in Baltimore and Pittsburgh. He will also potentially be able to token in Detroit soon. So, pretty good decision. By merging, he's going to be jumping up in stock value. Actually, no, he won't be. He'll be staying still. And has a permanent train with excellent routes. Very little loan burden. This does open up shares for other players, and Crackpot immediately jumps on that, so that's bad news for Rumbleman. General confusion. So has capitalized his company, will be able to afford some pretty good trains once these other trains rust. But unfortunately for him, he gave those shares away to his competitors. Jay, Rumbleman already merged two of his companies. I don't think he's going to be doing anything else here. He converts though. Okay. So a bunch more loans for permanent trains. And again, well, in this case, he's buying his shares. And the other players are not interested in helping. At least Crackpot wasn't. But the other players do, so he'll be floating up on both of his companies, at least in the stock round if this status quo continues. Belt could merge into the NYOW still. I'm kind of assuming we're going to see something here. And looks like we see nothing. So, sorry, I think I skipped one company's action maybe. Nope, everybody just passes. Okay. So A&A in the acquisition round. Is anybody in a position to acquire any companies here? I don't think so. I mean, in theory, it'd be possible, but you'd be discarding trains. Um, the NYOW could be acquired. Plenty of companies have the loan space for it. It has a very healthy treasury. Um, and I don't know that Crackpot's in a position to defend this, so it'd be probably a mistake to put that up. And otherwise, I don't think there's any other companies that will be acquired. Into the next operating round, A&S operating out of Baltimore and New York, running his 4 train, and he full withholds, probably taking loans for a 5 here. He does. So working on correcting his lack of permanent trains. UR running 3 trains, has good routes out of Pittsburgh. And he's actually able to, what did he do just there? D25. So he's heading into Boston of all places, not the highest yield. Running 3 trains out of Pittsburgh and has a pretty monstrous run of 570. May want to half pay here and pay off some loans, but again, his stock value is really getting very high. So he pays out, half pays, so he doesn't double jump, and then he'll be able to pay off some loans, it looks like. NYOW falling back. Always painful when that happens and you own 100% of the company. He buys a 5 as well. B&A, similar as you are, going to be running 3 trains out of Pittsburgh, it looks like. And has a monstrous run of 620. Would like to see him just full pay here. He's been doing too much half paying. And I think he can just start running away with this game. But he does another half pay. Okay. We'll be able to pay off some loans here, but he could have done that without half paying. And another company's stock value is really getting pretty high. He has a permanent train in the company at least, so not a huge target probably. SR, single 3 train, upgrading Scranton. Really doesn't have the loans for a permanent train at this point. He does secure a token of Rochester. Okay. Withholds and will pay off a loan. J, 2 trains, neither permanent. Are there 5 trains still available? There's 1 5 train left, so may see him take some loans for that 5 train. Gets the token in Toledo. So this is what we were talking about. Now he has two companies that have a pretty good chance of making the circuit out of New York. Running for 370. He half pays. Going to be paying off a loan and then buying a 5 train, it looks like. And belt, single 3 train. Running for 170. Not enough loans for a permanent train, so he half pays and pays off his loan. Bess, this company is going to get merged in with someone, I think. Um, or he'll buy trains into it, I guess. Really doesn't have very good routes. He is looking to bypass Rochester, get down into Pittsburgh potentially. And he buys a train over from the J. ME, two non-permanent trains, tons of loan space. May need to try and bring out this 6. It's going to be tall order to do it, and he'd really only be hurting himself because his A&A also has a 3 train, I believe. But someone's going to be bringing out the 6, and these companies are operating so late. These 3 trains are not long for this world. Upgrading Albany with full withholds and pays off a loan. Wally Burner is just falling further and further behind, unfortunately. A&A upgrading Indianapolis and running his 2 trains. Withholds again. Wow. So 2 full withholds on his 2 companies. Paying off a loan. Into the mergers and acquisitions. General confusion. Probably needs to grow up the UR at this point. Otherwise, he's not going to have loans to afford these more expensive permanent trains. Crackpot, again, has companies without permanent trains, so is going to be doing some merging, I assume, to eliminate his train liability and maintain these tokens. In terms of who he merges, he has options for both of his companies, so that's nicely done for him. Wally Burner can't merge his 2 companies, has full loan contingents for both of them, so we'll be able to afford a permanent train as long as he doesn't get stuck with the 8s. But he's just in a rough spot, I think. And then Rumbleman slowly running away with this game, it looks like. Has great tokens, 2 permanent trains. Doesn't have the option of doing much with the Bess. Could grow it up for more loans, but not going to be able to merge it. Needs to be a little bit careful about players taking advantage of this being a stock value, but has a full contingent of loans to defend with that. And then in terms of short into the stock round, general confusion I think is absolutely a target here. Very high stock value, only a single company, not a lot of cash to float. So pretty safe bet, I think, in terms of shorting him, especially if he grows up for a permanent train. We'll see if he does that. He does, so definitely a short target in my mind. And players are now capitalizing him. But Rumbleman is selling, so he may be forecasting that he's going to be shorting this company. B&A is just content to sit on the status quo. NYOW, he probably be merging both of his companies, I'd guess. Gonna pass, okay, so maybe not. He does merge at least one of those pairs to reduce his train liability. And the SR has pretty good tokens now, all through New York and up into Rochester, but has been token at Detroit and still at Pittsburgh. Not going to have an easy time bypassing Pittsburgh, so his routes are going to be a little bit limited. The belt in the NYOW. Passing. Bess. Does he grow this company up? He does not, and we're into the acquisition phase. Does this mean that anybody's acquiring any companies? So maybe he's setting himself up to acquire the belt. The belt, I believe, does have good tokens, right? I guess it's just the Cleveland token. Probably worth acquiring that company to preserve the token and eliminate the train liability. He wouldn't lose the token because he doesn't have the other Cleveland token. If he were to acquire that, it would be a feeding frenzy. You know, a lot of players could bid on this, so no guarantee that he would keep it. No friendly sales so far. This is the one we were worried about, Belt. Looks like it is being offered up, and we'll see how much players value that token. General Confusion passing, Wally passing, Rumbleman, of course. Surely this token's worth at least $10, right? Passing, and SR will acquire it. Okay. Nobody else is doing anything, and we are into stock round 5. Rumbleman has the most cash, is also share leader by a fair margin. Not really a short target, I don't believe. Potentially the B&A, but he can defend that fairly easily. All 3 players could get one short before he can take any loans in theory. Wally Burger, no permanent trains, 2 10-share companies, but very poor share value, so no real short potential there. Has very little cash. He's going to have to short if he wants to do anything exciting here. General Confusion, definitely a short target. We've kind of hammered that home at this point. And then Crackpot, I don't think he's a short target. May want to just float a company early before losing the valuable token spots. In terms of token spots, most of them are still occupied. There is one in New York that he could snag with an early float. Charleston seems more like a dead letter at this point on the basis of how track has developed. Boston's available. But again, with tokens in Albany and Scranton, I don't know that that's very valuable. So Crackpot may want to float a company in New York real quick and then come back and start shorting for just other shares, paying shares. So he takes the ANS and he puts that in New York as expected. Confusion is selling out of the ME. Okay. And the ANA. So all those shares that everybody bought last time. Didn't really have too good of a return, actually. Only ended up at 60. I think they both started at 40. And clearly, Wally did a bunch of withholding. So I imagine all the players are a little bit peeved that they invested in these companies. He is buying his UR, capitalizing it further. Actually, he buys it from the market, so he's not capitalizing it. And I wonder if we'll see this company shorted. General Confusion is not going to be able to buy these treasury shares to defend. He just doesn't have the cash. So we'll see. Wally Burner buying his ME, very cheap. And Rubbleman is buying the SR. SR is Crackpot's company, does have good routes, as we've discussed, and has permanent trains, so reasonable. But I'm surprised that we aren't seeing any shorts. I would really hate to see a game of 1817 with not a single short. Selling shares to capitalize his ANS, the newly floated New York company. General Confusion selling out of the J. J has great map position and permanent train. And he's going to work on capitalizing the UR, but the UR, he can't buy any more shares even now that he's sold out of the J. And Rumbleman's buying the SR still. Crackpot continues to float the ANS. B&A taking a loan and redeeming his market share so he doesn't fall back. Crackpot almost max capitalizing the ANS. General Confusion passing. Wally Burner passing. Rumbleman passing. So another kind of boring stock round. Nobody's taking advantage of these financial tools that they have available to them. In terms of trains, we are looking at the 6s still. And UR probably needs to take some loans to get that. He does have a treasury actually, so maybe able to afford it just by paying out. Tokening in Boston. And does take loans, buys a 6. I still think it was the right move to, I still think it would have been the right move to short this company. B&A, he is potentially looking to bypass Toledo down the road. Not entirely sure. Looks like he does. And runs for 560, but still paying for half. I've been criticizing Rumbleman for paying for half all the time, but you know what? He's starting to run away with the game, so it's working for him. Paying off his loans. A&S, the newly floated company. Upgrading Boston. And we'll have to buy a 6 here. It does. NYOW. Bypassing Rochester. And still token at Detroit, so not the most exciting track here. He does own 100% of this company still. It has a permanent train in it. Half pays will pay off his loan. And I think he just needs to continue paying with this company. He owns 100% of it, so even if the revenue is only 220, that's functionally like 440 of a 10-share company. Jay has some market shares, so unfortunately he's not going to be able to pay off his loans by just paying out into the treasury. And he lays a token in Cincy. Runs for 290, full withholds. Pays off, actually taking loans, so we'll be buying a 6, 2 permanent trains in this company, and 2 permanent trains running through Pittsburgh, usually a pretty strong company. SR, 4 and a 5, and running on the East Coast, so should be able to double tap New York and have some pretty good routes. Running for 540, has a full contingent of loans, so may have to full withhold here actually. Half pays, and we'll start paying off loans. Bess, this is the only weak spot for Rumbleman right now. I want to see how he handles his company. He does have 2 permanent trains in the J, so maybe that's his solution. He just buys a permanent train out of the J here. Running for 220, full paying, and going to sit on his train for now. M&E. Running his single train, has a full contingent of loans, may need to use those to buy the permanent train it needs, but needs to be careful it doesn't put itself all the way down into acquisition and liquidation. So he's half paying and not able to come up with the cash for a permanent train just yet. Charleston is finally laid. We're in operating round 5. And he half pays, slowly working his way up to permanent train money, into the mergers and acquisition round. General confusion, no options really. Wally Burner, also with really no options. Rumbleman, we'll see if he wants to do anything with this Best, grow it up or not. And then Crackpot also could grow up the NYOW if he wanted. So it should be a pretty fast merger and acquisition. And doesn't look like any friendly sales. We're back into the operating round, so very quick. Players are just playing an operational game at this point. B&A, 2 trains running out of Pittsburgh. Gets the gray upgrade on New York. And we still have 2 7 trains to go through. This game may drag a little bit if players don't start playing aggressively. So able to double tap Pittsburgh and New York, should have very nice revenue. 630, and he half pays. UR, gray tile on Boston, running 2 trains, and also has a good run through New York and Pittsburgh. So 680 for him. He full pays and is able to pay off a loan, 2 loans even. Monstrous stock value for him. SR upgrades Pittsburgh. All the gray tiles are coming out. Running 2 trains, but unable to run through Pittsburgh. So he's just going to pay for 670, half pays it and pays off his loans. A&S with a 6 train. Does have the token in New York, but has been tokened out a bunch of other places. So gonna probably struggle to take advantage of all 6 of his stops. Even with that, he's tokened in Buffalo, kind of random token. Running for 360, no loans, and a full treasury. Probably should just full pay, which he does. NYOW, permanent train, not the best tokens, but can upgrade Buffalo at least to run through there. Already has bypassed it, but does. Running for 270. Bess with the 4 train. Upgrades Detroit. And he full pays. So Rumbleman is just basically living off of his 100% presidency in a sense. He's still doing a lot of withholding and half paying on his um, more diluted presidencies, but this 2-share company is paying pretty good dividends with just the 4 train. I'm a little bit surprised that he hasn't bought a permanent train into this company and run 2 trains out of Detroit. He may be limited in his routes. That may be the limiting factor for him, just because with the 2 train company or 2-share company, you only have the 1 token. But I think that's his strategy here. It's just to run this 2-share company until the end of the game. 2 trains in the J. Running for 690 and another half pay. We'll be paying off some loans here. M&E, single 4 train. He had to half pay last time. And half pays again. So gradually working his way up to permanent train money. I don't think he's going to bankrupt. He has enough loans, but he is certainly not eager to actually take advantage of these loans to get a better train for himself. He has decent tokens. Um, Unfortunately, I guess he's a little bit limited. He doesn't have the token in Detroit, Pittsburgh, New York, so only going to be able to hit 2 of those revenue centers. Now he's taking loans and will be buying a 7. And if he does this with the A&A, the 8 will export and we'll see the endgame trigger. Maybe he's just tired of playing. Upgrading Charleston. Charleston now has a token on it. I forgot to mention that. And now 2 tokens. He half pays and is taking loans. So it looks like he buys the last 2 7s and is going to be triggering the endgame here. 4 trains have rusted. Does that affect anyone? It affects the best. And unfortunately for Rumbleman, he doesn't have the best tools to prevent it from falling back. That is his 100% presidency, but he is $1,300 ahead and has excellent routes for basically 2 of his companies, so probably not overly concerned. Wally Burner has 2 7 trains, but really doesn't have great routes for the M&E. The A&A has better routes. We'll need to probably lay F7 to get into Cleveland. So some potential there, but he's so far behind, he's eliminated. And then the UR sitting on a single 6 train has a massive stock value, but is going to be inadequate to bring him back into the game. So we may just see this next stock round and then pass to the end of the game. Doesn't look like anybody's interested in doing anything in the mergers and acquisitions. Bess is being offered up. Okay, so this is how Rumbleman is going to handle this. And a lot of companies have the cash to afford this company. I think it only has a single token on Detroit, which I don't know that he cares all of that much about. He already has a token there at the J. So he'd probably be happy to have some player just pay him for this token. Doesn't look like anybody's interested, so he will just buy it for as cheap as he can. All right. So Rumbleman has addressed all of his train liability. He is $1,300 ahead of everyone, is share leader. and has the most cash. He's not really a short target. I think Wally Burner still is a viable short target. Uh, General Confusion, I think General Confusion is still a viable short target. Um, Wally Burner has two very low value companies with good trains but limited routes. And then Crackpot, he has good routes, um, but has fallen enough behind Rumbleman that I think Rumbleman will just take it. We can move through the stock round very quickly. I'm just curious if any of the players are interested in doing anything exciting. General Confusion buying the J, probably going to have the highest revenue with these two permanent trains out of Pittsburgh. UR being bought, very expensive share, probably an underwhelming revenue with a single permanent train. Rumbleman also buying the UR, and General Confusion snaps up the last J. I neglected that Crackbot bought an ME of all companies. The ME, I think we decided, really didn't have routes to take advantage of the 7 train. So it can run to New York, Boston, Albany, Scranton, and then it really just has a run into Detroit through Buffalo, I guess. We'll have decent revenue, but actually, with the token available in Detroit now, can get into Chicago. So has actually a decent run. All right. I suppose if this company just double jumps, pays off a bunch of loans, then maybe it's worthwhile. Still no shorts. Rumbleman is selling out of the M&E, so we just talked about how that may end up being worthwhile, but he disagrees and buys a UR, buying the ANA. So Crackpot is focusing on these cheap shares, but he's going to run into problems with his cert limit. And the stock appreciation of this UR company may make it, more attractive than some of these cheaper shares. Wally Burner's passing, Rumbleman selling an ANA. So it's funny, he and Crackpot are diverging here in terms of their portfolios. Rumbleman is selling out of all these cheap shares, and Crackpot is snapping them up. Buying the ANS. Crackpot is just exchanging shares with Rumbleman. And General Confusion buying the ANA. So that company will be floating up. Looks like everybody's passing. Crackpot is now selling out of the M&E, these shares that he just bought, and General Confusion immediately buys it. Interesting. Okay. So this back and forth about the expensive shares versus the cheap shares, you can absolutely do the math there and determine, which one makes sense to buy. This is the end of the game. You know roughly what their revenue is going to be. There shouldn't be massive changes in the track, and you can look at the market and see if the appreciation in the share is worthwhile. I mean, this share is appreciating $40 a round, whereas this one's appreciating 5. So I have to imagine the UR is probably the better investment, but if you're playing this game, that's the kind of math you need to do. Shouldn't be any ambiguity there. So let's just look at the game state for a second. General Confusion, 3,600. Crackpot, 45. Rumbleman, $1,500 ahead of him. And Wally bringing out the rear. I see no really way back into this game for these other players. Rumbleman could even technically buy a second permanent train into the B&A if he wants. Wouldn't be hard for him to do that. And he's just going to run away with this. So let's skip through this operating round and just confirm that our suspicions are correct. Rumbleman is actually running quite a bit behind Crackpot. I imagine Rumbleman is still doing his half pay or full withhold game here. Looks like he half paid on the J and full paid on the B&A. B&A has 2 permanent trains now, so his revenue is going to be sky high once he gets serious and starts paying out. So I don't think this changes anything. Rumbleman should take this. In terms of the map, any new tokens come out. There's this token in Detroit that wasn't there before. I think that hurts the ME, which is what Crackpot was investing in, since now he has no access into Chicago. And then the rest of the tokens look pretty much unchanged. So I'm comfortable just ending this game. I think Rumbleman will take this comfortably. Crackpot will be near behind, and then Wally Burner will bring out the rear. And that's what happens. So well played to Rumpelman. I think that we were favoring him from the very start. He just had such good map position and then was able to snag those trains off of, I believe it was Wally Burner. So really just had a strong early game. Um, I think that he probably could have won this game by even a greater margin. He was doing a lot of half paying and withholding. In 1817, you oftentimes want to manage your stock value, but literally nobody in this game is shorted a single share. So I guess at a certain point, you have to realize that these players are not going to be doing that, and you don't have to worry about that. Um, but yeah, he played it conservatively and it paid off for him. Crackpot, I think, played fine. He played a little bit more aggressively than Rumbleman did. Um, and I think he had to because he was behind. So he needed to try and change things up. General Confusion and Wally Burner played much poorer than the other two players and just made, early game errors that compounded throughout the game um, that cost them this this game. Well played to Rumbleman, and Track Talk will be back. As mentioned, probably not with any more 1817 for the foreseeable future. We're going to diversify again, but I look forward to bringing some more complicated games, either 62 or 41, to the channel in the near future. Thanks for watching.